Hello, and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches from around the nation that are making the big time where they are at. This episode is brought to you by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is the software for strength and conditioning coaches. Join the thousands of coaches that log into TeamBuildr every day to write training programs, build questionnaires, and access and track athlete data. TeamBuildr is compatible with mobile devices, laptops, tablets, and TVs, which makes it the perfect software for any setting. If you sign up with code BIGTIME, you will receive a 25% discount on the Sports Science Certification course. Build the foundational skills necessary to manage data and learn how to transform that data into actionable assets for your program. You will also receive a free 10-week summer football programming template, which works automatically within your TeamBuildr 14-day free trial. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day, especially during breaks. Head to teambuildr.com and sign up with code BIGTIME to save time and paper today. This episode is also brought to you by Powerlift. Taking your athletic facility from concept to completion can be a challenge. At Powerlift, it is our goal to make the process as seamless as possible from start to finish. Our weight room equipment is made with the toughest materials that can withstand excessive use from coaches and athletes. It's sought after for its unique design, customizable appearance, affordability, and our superior warranty that training facilities want and need. Our weight rooms are designed with the athlete in mind, and we pride ourselves on our ability to outfit athletic facilities based on a team's unique goals. That's why high schools, colleges, universities, professional sport teams, and athletic performance facilities around the world have chosen us to help maximize their strength training facilities. Call us today to be contacted with a rep in your area and give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to see for yourself why our clients are Powerlift proud. Now let's get to this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. This is our 153rd episode, and I'm super excited about this one. I have Coach Adam Vogel on, and honestly, I've learned through Twitter so much from Coach, and I've stolen a few links. He's kept on putting these hyperlinks in his Twitter of some presentations that he's done recently. So for everybody, you might want to go over to his Twitter and check those out. I don't know if they're still there or not, but I've learned a lot through his PowerPoints too. So he is a head strength coach. He also is a football coach. He's a defensive coordinator, defensive line. He's the PE/CTE chair. So, like trying to lead his departments and then just doing so many things at a really, really high level. And pre-show, had the awesome opportunity for him just to help me out with what's next for me to keep on learning, to keep on growing, and to keep on making sure that moving in the right direction. So just thankful for that. And I know if you listen to the show afterwards and you want to reach out to him about any number of things, he will help you. He's that type of guy, and he has no lack of information and ways to help. So you got any questions for him, I'm sure he'll do that. So
I don't know everything, brother. I don't know everything.
Oh yeah. So he's being modest too. So be ready for that also. Yep. So Coach, we're just going to hop right into this. Just to give listeners a background, give us your background, how you got to where you're at, and maybe why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll be as brief as I can with this. I had the opportunity to, after I played college football at Indiana State, after I got done with high school, and then I had an opportunity to play indoor and Arena 2 football for 5 years. Got done with that. I got my degree in psychology originally. And so I thought that I was going to be a sports psychologist or clinical psychologist. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of like performance psychologists, right? It was more along the lines of dealing with like domestic issues or alcohol or drug abuse type things. And that just wasn't the road that I wanted to take my life. And so I had the opportunity after getting playing football. Our head football coach said, "Hey, I need a D-line coach. Will you coach for me?" I said, "Well, I'll do it for a season." And then I thought I was going to go the GA route and either be a football coach or go back into psychology and that kind of stuff. And I just fell in love with the high school kids. I really did. They were awesome. And so I was like, "Oh, I need to do this." That's what it felt like my calling was. And so went back to school, got my master's in teaching, took a couple extra classes. I already taken some exercise science classes, took a couple more so I could do PE. And I just happened to be able to, the guy that was the strength coach before me, Craig Bundy, was retiring. And so I just happened to do my student teaching with him and rolled right into that position. And what I loved about it was when I got in there, our athletic director said, "Hey, look, we need to fill holes, and we also need to get all sports involved. It's not going to be a football weight room anymore. And so I try to do my best to run with that. And I not only fell in love with our high school football players, but I ended up falling in love with all of our high school athletes because they care. They want to be successful. They care about what they do. And if I had an opportunity to play a small part in that, that's what I wanted to do. And so I've been at Bradley for the last 9 years as a strength coach, 12 years coaching football, and love what I do, love what I built here with our athletes, and I love what they built because it's really theirs. And so then I had the opportunity this last year. I'm going to be taking a new position at Homewood-Flossmoor. It's another school in our conference just up the road, and so I'm excited about that. New challenges, also new opportunities, and it's going to be a fun ride, I believe. So.
Well, that's awesome. It's awesome to have new opportunities, and it's great the mark that you've left on the school that you're already at. And one of the things, and I think this is important for probably every strength coach around the nation, is before high school strength and conditioning really took off, and maybe even having positions where we get to do like what me and you get to do, it was kind of considered the football weight room, right? It was considered, this is the place where the football team goes, and everybody else kind of just feels uncomfortable there. And right now it's really been on my heart to be like, I want to talk about this, and I want to give other coaches resources to understand what it's like to have a weight room where everybody is welcome. Can you tell us how you built that, and maybe some of the team camaraderie type stuff, and the developing leaders that you do along the way, and maybe just some of the weird things that you got going on, like the Kickstarters and stuff like that too.
Yeah. So like, I try to make it as inclusive as we can, to the point where we just hired some assistant strength coaches, and we got 2 female assistant strength coaches who are outstanding. And that's the most recent thing. And then some of the things that you're just talking about, like, making sure that they feel comfortable. And so I always tell them multiple times throughout the year, hey, if someone makes you feel uncomfortable in here, I need to know that, because this is as much your weight room as it is anybody else's. There's nobody's name on it. It's Boilermakers. That's our mascot. And so if you go to school here, you're a Boilermaker. So we want to make sure that they have those opportunities. And so then some things that we try to do, and when I talk about like during the day with our PE classes that come in there, it's all sports, and there could be a cheerleader right next to a wrestler, right, and multi-sport wrestler with football player maybe, and then like next to that rack might be a volleyball player or a cheerleader. Like, so we want them all to feel like they belong. We want them all to have opportunities to grow in there and get better. And we're going to challenge them all equally as far as those things go. And so we'll have things like you talked about, like Kickstarters. So one of the big things that got me into want to do Kickstarters and things like that is I read The Happiness Advantage. And going back to my psychology background with priming, when they walk through the threshold of the door, I want them to hopefully, any baggage they have, leave at the door and they come in with a smile on their face, or at least getting them thinking. And so we'll ask them a question of the day. Every single day we ask them a question when they come in. And we actually got to a point now where all of our athletes also have jobs in there, which we call responsibilities. And so they'll greet at the door. We have door greeters. That's literally what they're called. So they hold the door open. I used to do that. And then when we were doing our responsibilities, I said, hey, I want to be at the door with you, coach, and greeting everybody at the door. So we'll do that, greet them at the door. We'll do something with touch theory where like we're either knucking it in, high-fiving, hugging each other when we come in. So we get those types of things as well. We ask them a question, so hopefully get them thinking a little bit. And then right away when we start our, before we start anything, our warm-up or anything, we'll do what we call a Kickstarter. So it's a little bit of competition, and it always gives us a smile and laugh and have some fun. And so it might be head, shoulders, knees, and toes, and they grab a collar. We could do back to back, and they pull somebody off the ground, arm wrestle, thumb wrestle, staring contest, don't crack, don't smile contest. And so it literally takes less than 2 minutes, and it sets the tone for the rest of the day, because hopefully now they're in a good mood to be there.
So Kickstarters for me have been a pretty awesome deal too. And I've stolen a ton from you. One of the ones I've liked recently was the leg wrestling one. That was awesome. Yeah. But 2 minutes, well worth it. And sometimes what I'll do is as soon as we get through the door, we greet, that type of stuff, I explain things and kind of slows the tempo down. And people are like, okay, I got it. But like the energy's not there. You go right into a Kickstarter right after that, then the energy's like right back up. So I love that stuff. Yeah. So transition just a little bit here, because one of the things that people will see if they see you on Twitter or wherever else that you put content, they'll see just a lot of things that you're doing at a really, really high level. And some of those things they require tools. Maybe it's velocity-based training, maybe it's iPads at every rack, all those type of things. Can you tell us about some of the tools that you like to utilize and some of the things that you're doing within your weight room that might just be next level stuff?
So I really want to make sure that they get objective feedback. And I also, I know I'm probably alluding to the question at the end of how do you make the big time where you're at? I want them to feel like they have the best opportunities there, whether it be facility wise, whether it be with technology. I really want them to feel like that they had a D1 experience in high school. And so when I do those things, the thing is not just about what we have, it's what we do with it, right? We want to make sure that we're using it properly. So even to the point that, like, I'll talk about some of the nice stuff we have, but like we got some extra racks from the local university and they were junky racks. Like they don't even have a brand name on them or anything. We threw them underneath our bleachers. And so we have an outdoor weight room now, and bought some extra cheap barbells. All of our old plates we've been putting out there, old dumbbells go out there. So we have an extra weight room underneath our bleachers during the summer months. It's great. When COVID was going on and we had to split everybody up, we had an opportunity to still get our athletes stronger that way, which was great too. So that's like one of the things is whatever you have, you got to make the most of it. Now, what we got in the weight room is unreal. I'm always trying to hustle to get to raise money for it. But like you said, like big time things that are different. We have a lot of technology. So we have velocity based training at every rack. So we have BMAX Pros at every single rack. We use TeamBuildr, so we have iPads at every rack. We just recently put lights into all of our racks just to make it feel cool, so that they just got these like cool things. There's 7 TVs in the weight room, 3 on one side, 4 on the other side, so that they get all the I want them to have objective feedback. That's probably the big reason why we started those things, is I want them to be able to see what they're doing, and so that they understand like where they're at in the process of things. So if we're doing jumps, the intent goes up when they see that on plyo mat. So we have 2 plyo mats for that. Like I got a set of force plates that we use Vold's been amazing for us. We have a Nord board and we have a set of force plates that we use from Vold, and they get to see what counter movement jump looks like on a graph, and they get to see what qualities they're training when they do those types of things. And like we do Nordic curls all the time. Well, they don't care about Nordic curls, but when you put a number to it, they care about Nordic curls, right? So things along those lines. We use GPS with our soccer and football teams. Let's see what else I try, like I said, I try to make sure that we have some sort of way of measuring almost everything that we do, besides just the load and what the weight's on the bar. So not that that's not important, that is important to a certain extent, but then when you start to get into more layers of things, you start to question, okay, well, is that the ideal way to measure that? Or is that the best way to elicit the quality you want from that athlete? And so that's kind of what got me down all those different roads.
Yeah, it might be the age old, but Brian Mann, why is our hang clean numbers or our clean numbers going up and our vertical jumps not? Okay. So I love it. I love being able to see that. How about for a coach like myself? Yeah. How do you handle all of those different things? Because for me personally, that's overwhelming to be able to do all of that and to do it well. How was that process? Is it just one thing at a time?
Yeah. So I always say you want to keep it simple, but you want to add layers to it. Right. So everybody knows the depth in a recipe is not necessarily the ingredients, but like how long you let it simmer and things like that. Right. So that's one way to look at it. Same thing as a high performance car is not going to look like a car you get off of a lot, but you still need a car. Right. So you start simple and then you start to juice up that engine a little bit. So some things to do that. So whatever you end up investing in first, you make sure you have like a system where you have layers to it. So like I know everybody's into VBT right now. That's an easy thing to add layers to. So if I'm using VBT, the first thing I'm going to just use it for is driving intent. Okay. One of the reasons why I like the units that we picked was because We can also look at bar path if we wanted to go down that road, or I can look at the depth when we're doing any sort of squat, and make sure that we're hitting proper distance. So if I just want to drive that, first thing, hey, do you have the right load on the bar? So I'm gonna start with percentage, and then we're gonna go into what quality we're trying to train. So if we're trying to train strength or circuit max strength, then I want you between this 0.3 and 0.5. If you're above 0.5, we're gonna need to add more weight. If you're below 0.3, hey, we're not trying to max you out right now, so you need to lighten the bar a little bit. So that kind of gives you that auto regulation. They talk about like day to day, everybody's a little bit different based on sleep and whatever you might have done with your body the few days before that. So that's one layer. And then I might want to start tracking power output, or I might want to start looking at different qualities other than just strength. Maybe I want to look at speed strength or strength speed or things along those lines. So that's like a simple way to do it. You can do the same thing with timers and lasers, right? You start out with just a laser time in one split or segment, and then all of a sudden you start to add more split gates, right? And that's another way to layer it. It just comes down to what you can manage, like you said. So who's putting all that stuff in? Well, if you're fortunate to have TeamBuildr and kids can enter it, or what we've done too, like you talked about the culture of everybody feeling welcome and inclusive, we have what we call athleters. And so those student athletes that want to come back, and so we can either get them out of their study hall, we'll slip them out of their study hall, or they'll volunteer to come after school because they're out of season. They might be a senior or a junior. They already did their workout during the day, and they want to come and help after school. And so they'll do a lot of the data entry for me so that I don't have to do that data entry. I can just go back through and clean it up in case there's a missed number put in or something like that. Because I do want to make sure what we're tracking is accurate too, right?
Absolutely. That's really good. I think the idea of layering is a great way to do that, because for me, if I tried to implement all of that all at once, I would get overwhelmed, but just one piece at a time, and being able to build off of that, even with a particular unit, like say it's VMAX Pro, and just start out with intent, right? Being able to realize, what does this number actually mean? And then, being able to do that over and over and over, and then moving on to the next thing. Yeah. So that's good stuff. So you already said that you're a hustler, right? Like you try to figure out a ton of different ways to raise money for all these different tools to add to the experience for your student athletes. Tell us about that. What are some of the things that you're doing to
so Doug Lee at Traverse City, he's the master of this. So like he knows how to do all the grant writing, all that kind of stuff. So I'm okay at grants. He's the master at those things. But I always try to exhaust everything that we can. So number one, don't be afraid to ask, right? Because you don't know what you'll get. And I found too is always that over ask, because they're going to always typically people are going to settle somewhere in the middle. So don't just ask, within reason what you need, but like you want to ask, like I asked for 14 TVs, I got 7, so I got half. So if I had to do it again, I would ask for 21 TVs, hoping for 14. But like that's the first thing. So like go to the people that that can help you, like athletics, certain team sports might be able to help you, and also like your curriculum office can help you, right? Because if it's a class during a P day, you might be able to get that. Okay, Doug Lee will talk about different grants in your community that you could possibly get. Some of the things that we do a lot of is I try to pick fundraisers that are not going to take away from our sports teams fundraisers, right? Because our kids are asked to sell all the time, and I have a lot of kids, so I look for opportunities where organizations or people need people to try and get it that way. So we've helped out with like marathons and like 10Ks as the volunteer people at the event, and we'll make money that way, especially since we're only an hour from Chicago. There's a lot of 10Ks and 5Ks and triathlons and all that kind of stuff. So that's one way we'll do it. If you're in an area that's not as populated, some other things that we have done is we've sold in the fall, we'll sell seats, so season ticket seats. We bought the custom seats that you can attach to the bleachers, and so that money goes back to the weight room. So we broke even, I think, the first 2 or 3 years just so we could pay it off, and now everything from that point on is a profit. And so that's what we'll do in the fall. In the winter, we'll usually try to do some sort of like lift-a-thon or some sort of like donations fundraiser type thing like that, because I haven't really found anything to fill that void. And then in the spring, we'll do a mulch fundraiser. So we'll sell mulch. So we have a local tree nursery that sells mulch. And so we hooked up with them where like, hey, we'll handle all the middle ground stuff. And I just send them, we have an online payment form and everything. I just send them how much the person ordered, where they want it on their driveway, and how much they want. And then they just go and deliver it and drop it off. And then I give them one big check at the end. So we help them out with delivering more mulch, but at the same time, we're kind of playing the middleman to make some money for a weight room that way. And then in the summers, our biggest money makers, we charge our student athletes for summer training. We keep it very reasonable, but usually about 50 to 60% of what we make in the summer, we give back to the weight room so we can upgrade our technology, upgrade our equipment. And then we also will give them a free t-shirt for the summer, right? So what we've learned with that is we get 20 to 25 sponsors to pay $250 per sponsorship, and they go on the back of that shirt. And so the kids get that shirt in the summer training. And so not only does that help pay for the shirt, but it also gives us some extra money there too. So so not only does the shirt make some money for us, but also we don't have to spend the $10 or $15 to make that shirt from their camp for money. So that's 10 or 15 more dollars that we can put into the weight room from summer camp. That's literally our biggest one right there, is doing the summer stuff, because with that, we've gone all the way down to kindergarten now. So we stole a lot of the stuff from Jeremy Frisch with our K through fifth graders. So we'll do a lot of obstacle course, bear crawls, animal type things. And then we'll do that with those groups. And then from 6th grade to 8th grade, we do what we call our APT Ascend. APT is our version of strength conditioning. It just stands for athletic performance training. So that's where we'll do like the Dr. Yessie's 1x20 program and things like that with those athletes, and then gradually get them into progressive overload. And then we have our incoming freshmen, and then we have our varsity athletes. So I think last summer we had over, I want to say close to 500 athletes from K through 12th grade do our summer training.
Sorry, I gotta unmute my mic there real quick. That is awesome. That's really cool. And one of the things that just stands out to me is like, you've got a plan for year round. What's it look like to continually make money so that you can once again just spend it on the athletes, right? Like continue to make the opportunities there for them. I think that's great. And to be able to do that and do that well over and over and over, I think that's awesome. So one of the next questions I have for you is what it looks like for you to be an athlete in your room. So an athlete walks in, they're doing the Kickstarters, they're doing all that type of stuff, but what's it look like maybe a 9th grade through 12th grade? What's their experience like?
Yeah. So are you thinking more about like the structure of the programming, like overall, right?
Yeah. So, like we can talk about X's and O's and methodologies and that type of stuff if you want to hear, but even just like what for a kid, how are they feeling as they come in? What are the things that you want them to know? And then what does that look like as they travel through their high school experience?
Okay. So one of our big things with them is we always tell them movement over muscle, right? We want them to make sure that our technique's going to override everything all times. So we kind of have like a 5 different things that we work on with our athletes. There's a thread of all of them all the time. And then depending on where they're at in their journey, that might be an emphasis for them. So with our freshmen, it's always movement quality, right? And anybody below that, it's always movement quality. That's our first thing that we're focusing on. Once we get through their movement quality, okay, the next thing, and we know like, hey, look, they're good in all these different movement patterns. Okay, now we're going to start working on building strength. So there's always going to be like I said, a thread of strength in there, and we're still going to always have a thread of movement in there. But now the main focus is getting them stronger. And so we have KPIs and standards for all of our sports and all of our athletes by training age, their body weight, and their sex. Okay, so their biological sex. So we built all that out for them, and so then they know what targets they're trying to hit, because strength is super important, but it's not the end all be all for athletics. And so once they hit the strength standards that we have, we know they're going to continue to get stronger. However, that's where we stopped kind of worrying about strength. It's not the emphasis anymore. So now we're going to emphasize power. So our power development is the next stage that we go to, and that's one of the big reasons why I wanted all of them using BBT. We talked about adding layers, because now I'm going to start worrying about them driving their power output for our specific lifts, as opposed to just worrying about how much they can lift. And then once they hit through the power, and that's usually, we don't get beyond that for our athletes, except for we have a few of them that will get into speed. Okay, well, now we're going to start looking very, very specific. What does this athlete need? Do I need to give them special exercises to drive whatever they need to be successful at their sport? And so a lot of times this can come down to having a conversation with the sport coach as well. Okay, so from a physical standpoint, what things does this athlete need to be successful? So, and when I say speed, it could be deceleration, right? Or it could be cutting and change of direction. So like we have an athlete who runs a 4.5 40 laser to laser, and the thing that he needed the most was how to cut. And so we started to look into some of that Tony Villani stuff and how to cut from XPE and things like that, because that's what that athlete needed. So that's when we talk about specific speed. And then the last category we have is capacity. I don't like to call it conditioning. I like to call it capacity, because conditioning, one, has a negative connotation, and then two, it could be different for each sport, right? So we know that like baseball is highly anaerobic. Do they really need conditioning, or do they just need more capacity at producing power multiple times, right? So that's where we kind of go down that different road with capacity. And so same with like our GPS, with what we've done with our football team especially, is we know by position group about what the high average is for them in a game. And so we build that all the way out from about 16 weeks. It's really only 12 weeks, but we had some extra weeks because our Red Dawns, which is our Friday morning workouts. I stole that from Brian Clark when he was at Noblesville. And that's when we have they can volunteer to come in the morning. And for an hour, we're going to add more capacity to them. So we're making sure they're getting the accels, decels that they need, their change of direction that they need based off of the catapult numbers that we have. And then we're going to also start to add, making sure that they get the high speed distance that they need as well. So that by the time we get into summer and then we start fall camp, we shouldn't have to worry about conditioning. And we shouldn't have to worry about doing extra sprints at the end of practice, because that's not what we're going to do. We're going to try to build it within the practice plan.
That's a great way to be able to say, I mean, like you talked about, you're having a thread or you have a piece of each one of those things, but the emphasis changes throughout. Do you level or block those, or is it all based off of those KPI standards to be able to make those decisions? And how do you do that as one of you in a very large school to get that done well?
Yeah, so we it's more, I would say, phases than levels, but there's also some blocks in there. So and the reason why, one of the things I found is I don't want to have a kid stay in a certain block because their split squat numbers aren't as high as their deadlift, clean, and snatch numbers, right? So, oh, well, you got to have all of them there, or hey, you can only have one of them there. Well, to me, they're all important, or they're not all important, but at the same time, like, they're ready to move on in one lift or one movement pattern, and they're not ready to move on the other. Like, which one is it? So I've started to look more, and I'm going down this road right now where we're looking at qualities. Do they need more force production, or do they need more rate of force development? You know what I mean? Or do they need to work on like braking or impulse or things like that? That's what I'm starting to dive down to more, and then making sure that we're kind of hitting that. But going back to make it more simplified for what we're doing right now is our incoming freshmen will start by 1 by 20. Once they get the movement patterns down and we see that they're there, some freshmen might move on to the sophomore group. And hey, you're gonna go with these sophomores in this other group because they're ready for working on strength. While these other ones, hey, you're gonna stay in movement pattern until we get that down. And then usually like the most of them will move together. And then every once in a while you have one or two kids that are by themselves, right? Or they didn't come to the weight room till winter and everybody else is 6 months ahead of them. That's where my athleters come in. They don't only do data entry. That's when one of my athleters might help that one athlete, because they've already been through that process and they know, hey, look, this person's going to start out with just body weight squats, and then they're going to go to Bulgarian and then landmine. And while everybody else is right now in front squats, let's say. We'll also utilize interns. We got a university like a half mile away, and so I usually get 1 to 2 interns, and so I'll get them to help with that. They won't usually help with that part of it. They'll help with like maybe if it's 6 or 8 kids that are in that group, you know. And then once we get into that strength phase, most athletes, they'll stay in that strength phase unless they're really dedicated to get to the power phase, right? Or they some might get through it really quickly, and so then they'll just go into power. Now when we go into power, a lot of the lifts stay pretty similar, and we might have little differences. So like for example, our baseball athletes might do more reverse lunges, while our track and football athletes might do more Bulgarian squats, but it's still a unilateral knee hinge is what we call it. So They're still getting the same things. Just I want more hip shoulder separation with baseball, softball players than I think that I need with my football track athletes or most of my other sports. So that's kind of how they'll phase through. So it's not like they're in a category or they're in a certain block or anything like that. It's like, hey, it's a little bit more fluid. And how I do that is we have different bands that they can earn. So when they're wearing their bands, I can see where they're at if I don't know the athlete as well. But most of the athletes, I got a pretty good idea. Or if they try to, like, we have a big deal about, hey, you need to be able to front squat 1.5 times your body weight if you're a male, or if you're a distance runner or distance athlete, you need to be able to do 1.3. And then with our female athletes, you need to be able to front squat 1.0 times your body weight. Unless you're a power athlete like cheer or softball, then you need to be able to do about 1.25. So if I see an athlete not doing a back squat and I see like the loads really light, I can tell like, hey, that person only weighs like 155 and they're doing like 155 on back squat. That's 50% of their max. They're not ready for it. So then I can have that quick conversation with them like, hey, you're supposed to be front squatting, aren't you? And they're like, oh yeah. Because I'll print it out and I'll put it on bulletin boards so they can see if they're in the power group or not. Otherwise, they're still in the strength group.
Yeah, that's awesome to be able to explain it like that. I've always wondered how coaches do levels, actual, like where you talked about like categories, whatever. And I struggled to be able to move some and not others. And so we shifted to a little bit more of like what you're talking about, where most people move in the same pattern or in the same phases. And then sometimes you have to, like it's tough for kids to hear the word regression, but like you hold people back just a little bit until they get it and they keep on going. Yeah. So just giving kids what they need when they need it. Right. That's partly our job. I think that the way that you do that is super interesting. I also like all the strength standards that you have tied to those though. So people can know where they should be or what that looks like to be performing at where they need to be, weight room wise to get the outcomes that you want on the softball field or whatever it was. So heavily tied with that is your programming methodology. And that's a really open term to be like, okay, like if you're going to try to explain somebody your program, how would you explain it?
Yeah. So we kind of like, if you're looking at it from the, I'll talk about programming and periodization. I separate them. Okay.
Yes.
So programming first. And so the programming standpoint, I'm like a lot of coaches, we use Joe Ken's tier system, but I've also taken some things from like Mike Boyle and modified it a little bit. And so we always are going to do our first tier is going to be some sort of, so after we do our dynamic warm up, after our Kickstarter, we'll always pair that with some mobility work. I've tried at different times doing different, if you want to use correctives as a term or not, from like the dynamic warm up movement or dynamic movement, the DWMA, the dynamic warm up movement assessment from Bluey, which I love that. I'm starting to look into some of the RPR and reflexive stuff and neurological training because I met Dan Fichter a couple weeks ago and he just blew my mind up. So I'm looking at some of those things as part of after they do their dynamic warm up of having that in there because we have one person do the complex. So we'll do a clean squat, snatch or jerk complex while the other person's doing a little bit of mobility work. So they might be doing ankle pushes, things like that, or some sort of hip mobility. And if I see somebody that has a really bad issue, right, like they lack ankle mobility, they lack T-spine mobility, then I'll say, hey, look, no matter what we're having everybody else do, you're going to focus on this till we get this right. Okay. And so, and they're really good about it because our kids are really good about that because they know like, hey, that's individualized for them and helping them out. Right. So usually they don't feel singled out about that. So on a lift day, we're going through that. And then we'll do our Olympic lift for our Olympic lift variation for our tier 1. I like to superset, or even if you want to call it mega set, 3 exercises together. So one might be doing Olympic lift variation. One's doing some sort of low level plyos or activation work. So it could be like pogos or band assisted jumps or band assisted pogos, along with some sort of like Palloff presses, or we might be doing some sort of plank rotations. Trying to think of some other things that we'll do from that point. Band face pulls to get some extra pulls in, and some sort of scap retraction type stuff, especially with our overhead throwing athletes. So they'll pair those together with our tier 1. Our tier 2 is going to always be our main, like if you want to, I don't like to use the word strength, but like main strength workout, I guess, for that lack of a better word. But That's typically going to be either an upper body or lower body. And so it'll be either bench or incline. Sometimes it'll be jerk. And then for our lower body, it'll either be a squat, a split squat variation. So squat variation, a split squat variation, or deadlift. And we trap our deadlift with our athletes. And then we'll pair that up with an antagonist, right? So if we're going to do a knee, all those are typically knee hinge for us. So we're going to pair it with a hip hinge, like an RDL or band hip thrust or something like that. And then or a row. And then we'll also try to put another plyo in there. So we'll do plyos 2 days of the 3 days of the week that we typically train. And so the plyo, that's going to be more of a power plyo, right? So like some sort of box jump or broad jump or something like that. For that, it's going to be a little bit higher intensity. And then our third tier is going to be our accessory work for the opposite. So if we're doing lower body for our tier 2, it'll be upper body, like some sort of dumbbell, bench or alternating incline, something like that, with some more pulls like chin ups, or one arm rows or inverted rows. And then usually, depending on if we have time to pair a third one with that, we will. Otherwise, we'll just leave that as it is, because I try to get like a quick 2 to 3 minute finisher in if I can, 1 or 2 days a week. And then that 2 and 3 will just switch on the opposite training days, but we're always going to keep tier 1 how it is. So that's kind of how we do it from a programming standpoint. The off days is more regen stuff, or it's our movement core flexibility stuff. So that's when we're going to get our speed work in, things along those lines. So that's the structure for our programming, but our periodization with our incoming freshmen, I already talked about how they're doing a lot of 1x20 for about 6 to 8 weeks. I probably should milk it longer. I'm just not patient enough to do that. So then we go into linear periodization with our freshmen, sophomores. And then once we get into our varsity athletes, we go into like a modified block or undulating, where we'll do our strength day on Mondays. And then we'll do our power work. When I say power work, I'm saying like we do a lot of speed strength stuff. So like typically between 40 to 60% of their max on those types of lifts. On Wednesdays, and then on Fridays, depending on what they need. If they're in the power group, they'll do more speed strength or strength speed type stuff. If they're in the strength group, they'll do more circumax strength at 0.3 to 0.50 meters per second. So when we talk, so they might be doing the same lifts, but they're doing different percentages. So we'll kind of split it up that kind of way for that. Now, if they're in season, they'll have one day where we have like our game day workout, which is starting strength below like 40% or below. And if you're in season, you have 2 days that you're going to work hard, and you have 1 day that you're still working hard, but you're going to be doing more of what we call our game day lift, which can be a lot lighter, a little bit, just to take some of the stress off and things along those lines. If I seen some with GPS numbers are way over or something like that, I'll have a conversation with them. Or if there are, we do RPE scores with them. If I see something where like, man, this athlete's off, they're not hitting their numbers, then we'll bring the velocity down, and we'll bring it, so which in turn brings the load down. We don't do a lot of reps and sets. A lot of our stuff is 3 sets and 5 or less reps a lot of times. So I don't really have the luxury of taking down volume, because we keep our volume fairly low.
Right. That seems to be something that I've been learning from a lot of high school strength coaches across the nation, is that they try to keep the rep ranges pretty low all the time anyway, which makes sense. It really does. Sometimes what I wonder about is like work capacity, and just being able to, well, within a high school schedule, right? Like periods and all that type of stuff, you only have so much time. What does that look like? You know, like, do you ever feel like a kid just needs a little bit more time underneath the bar? Or is that where you milk the 1x20 more?
No, you're right. I wish I would milk 1x20 more. I wish I'd do more. More in our linear phase, we'll do some 3x10s. And then with our like baseball and football players and anybody that's really anaerobic based, we'll do cluster sets with them. And then with the guys that do need more and ladies that do need more, they can come after school to do extra. And so I'll talk to them about that. And especially our football and baseball, and I've really taken to that. So we're going to get more volume by having a second training session in the afternoon for them. So it actually works out better. We actually get more power output from them, right? Because they're able to train at a higher percentage of their max when we're looking at the velocity for it. So that's what we typically like. Now my underclassmen that need more, it's a little bit tougher. And so if I had to do it again, I'd try to encourage them to come in the morning. That's a hit or miss sometimes before school, or just say, hey, look, it might be better once we get their training age up there a little bit. Hey, it might be better if you come 4 or 5 days a week as opposed to 3.
Yeah, I saw a coach out of Texas. His name's slipping me right now. Oh, is Coach Neal.
Yeah,
he's a BTS alum, but he showed some data recently that was like 2 days. This was how many gains they had, 3 days, 4 days, and everybody that was more consistent, 4 days a week, were blowing it out of the water. I'm like, oh man, that's like, everybody talks about less is more and all those type of things, but it's like really when you get quality consistency there, it seems like there's a lot of benefits to be reaped from that. So
yeah, and it depends on the goal too, right? Like if we know our goal is strength and not power or speed, we know that the CNS needs more time to recover for power, speed versus strength. And then also, like as you build, like you talked about building capacity, like someone that's highly trained, their low day is a high day for somebody that's not trained, right? Like so that's a whole different animal too. So like just understanding that like that's why I like running them. I sprint them at least 1 day a week, preferably 2, like either Monday or Tuesday and then Friday if they're out of season. If they're in season, I try to get at least 2 sprints in 1 time a week with them. And I find that if I see their speeds going down, that means their CNS is not responding and recovering. So that's when I know I need to back them off, along with their mental performance with their RPE scores. High school kids are better than you think, but then you start to figure out I wouldn't say that they're soft. I'd say more along the lines, who has a better perception of what they can produce and what they can't,
Yeah, that's so interesting too. As training age goes up, perception of different things,
Yes.
for sure. And sometimes, and this is a whole nother conversation, but one of the things that I'll see sometimes, even NSCA has put this out, like girls have a higher threshold, or I don't know how they say it, but sometimes I think maybe it's just a training age thing too, because we have some girls that like they perform very, very similar to our dudes with weights too. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole, not really trying to go down that, but just really interesting how work capacity changes and perception changes along the way, especially when you have an athlete that's 14 years old all the way up to 18. You get to see that ride.
I will say with real quick with that, when we did our junior high, our ABT said our girls, because they're pretty much at maturation stage at 6th, 7th, 8th grade, when they come in as freshmen, they're starting to hit numbers that our juniors have. So like you really get some great like gains with them. And then it's more depending on their sport about, and I haven't dove too much into this because you got to be careful about just keeping them lean, right? Because they're still going through womanhood, and so their body's still changing, and it's a struggle that they fight with, and but you get that benefit so much earlier with them when you start them early. With guys, it's a little bit hit or miss more, right? Because a lot of them are either going through puberty or haven't gone through puberty yet. Very few of them have already gone through puberty at that age. So you start to see these gains, then you see them regress a little bit, and then you start to see them come back, right? Because they're still growing, and so now everything's changed, especially if you're doing Olympic lifts, because you're like, man, you were able to clean 185 as a freshman, and now you're still at like 190, 195 as a sophomore. Well, they just went through a big growth spurt, so now everything got switched up on them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more and more, I'm trying to think of my own experience like that too, and I think there's so much to be said about the skill development or the training age with that, because like you're able to bounce through those things quicker. You see that same thing with basketball or football or softball, baseball, whatever it is, like if you are training all the way through those things, it's not as huge of a difference, but definitely. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, that's a good point. One of the cool things that I see from you a lot is you're just learning and you're growing and you have this vision. I know you have this vision for the future of like what you want to see next. And if it's adding lights to every one of your racks, or if it's programming wise, whatever it is, you kind of have like this schedule in your mind of what's next. Can you I want you to merge these two questions. What is your vision for your program in the next 5 years? And I know you're starting at another school, so that's a completely different answer probably than if you're at the same school. And then what are you excited about learning and growing in this next year or so?
So yeah, it's like dual fold, right? So if I'm looking at Homewood, where I'm going to go next, it's about really trying to take what we've done and using the good qualities of it, but also knowing that, hey, they're different, right? So like, and not different in a good or bad way, but like they might have different needs. So I'm gonna have to do a needs analysis with those sport coaches and with the watching their athletes and seeing what we need to do there. And then just because it worked at my previous school doesn't mean it's going to work there. So my big challenge that I'm thinking about with that is making sure that I'm serving our new students the way that they need to be served. And then also making sure that we're building or adding into the culture that they want to have and not taking away from it. So I'm the outsider coming in. I need to make sure that I'm very cognizant of what things they're attuned to, ready for, or what they want and need. And so I've really been trying to build relationships with them and understand what their programs need and what they want it to look like. And maybe I'm slow rolling it too much, but I just don't want to come in with a fist and a hammer and say, this is what we're doing. And then we go back 2 years or something. Right. And so from a 5-year standpoint for the school I'm at now, it's more about systematizing even better, like making it more efficient. It drives me nuts when I can't make an athlete better or I miss that connection with them. So I do try to always keep a piece of how can I make the environment better for all of our athletes? And then once I know, like, hey, this is a good, safe environment for all our athletes, how can I make it particularly good for individual athletes, right? So that we're really trying to be intentional with what we're doing in there. And so that's kind of what would be my plan if I was still going to stay where I'm at. Going forward, I kind of said that, like, I want to also build in, like, I know that they said they wanted a technology piece at Homewood going forward. So making sure that I'm not just going into everything that I'm doing now, but that we're phasing those things in, like we talked about with layers. And then I want to make it more holistic. I want to make sure that we're doing things that are going to serve outside of the weight room, right? So like the nutrition aspects, the sports psychology aspects, recovery and regeneration for them. Do we need to go down to the junior highs for those athletes and go to 6th and 7th grade? And what does that look like? And then with myself personally, making sure that I'm competent in all those areas, and then starting to build off of the needs that I need to do for that. Like a lot of things is I have a lot of coaches with me too, which is great. I built that out over time. Am I doing a good job of coaching my coaches? Are we all getting better together? And what things do they need? And how can I help coach them with that? I'm always big about coaching cues and how we do that. But then, like, now I'm starting to look at a little bit more of the neurological training and then all the aspects of speed. I'm not a track coach, but I understand that it's not just strength, right? So I got to get better as a speed and agility coach. And is what we're doing in the weight room, is that helping drive those numbers, right? And so we kind of talked about that a little bit in the pre-show. Is like, I want to make sure what I do for our athletes, or what our athletes do in the weight room, is transferring to the field. And we use that word transfer all the time, but like, is it really going to impact what they're doing for their sports, right? So like, especially like a sport, like take a sport like swim or water polo, right? They're not on land, but we're using land for them. So how do we make sure those things are transferred? So am I looking at them coming off the blocks? Am I asking the coach, hey, how do they look like coming out of the water before they shoot the ball? Are we seeing them, when they're timing their sprints in the pool, are those things getting faster? So that it might not be something I'm tracking, but it might be something their coach is tracking. Am I helping in that? Or are we driving that performance the way that they want it driven?
I really thought my list was long. I thought it was. And then you talk to somebody else and
Oh, I know. So, and like I told you that I said, I'm in 30 different directions with 30 different dimensions right now. The neurological side of training, I really feel like the psychological side of training for us is really lacking. It's a huge need in our field. And I think about that all the time. Like, what am I doing psychologically to prepare our athletes for their sports? And we do visualization, we'll do mindfulness. We do a lot of goal setting. We do some positive self-talk, but when we do it, it's almost like segments, and I want it to be interwoven into what we're doing.
Yeah, it's like that complete environment, like you've talked about. I want it to be welcoming for everybody. And then I want to work on every individual after that. Like that's a cool way to think about that. But then also, like, how do we intertwine all of these buckets of athleticism? There's so many different variables, so many different categories. That's an age-old question, but it's something that makes this job really interesting, really fun for a long time, right? Like it doesn't get boring because there's so many aspects, so many things to get better at. I love that. That's great. One of the things that you had wrote prior to the show, and I'll just read it for everybody that's listening. Coach talked about he tries to strike a balance between objective data, a cultural environment that works hard and has fun with a focus on driving sport performance, right? And if you were going to what would it look like to be the ideal strength and speed or performance coach? Like being able to tie all that together and then just balancing that. Coach, maybe dive into that, because it sounds like that's something that's on your heart. Tell the listeners a little bit more what you're thinking about with that.
Yeah. So like, I think everybody, when we talk about what are your goals in the weight room, right? It's like number one is like some people say, do no harm or mitigate injury, right? So I always want to make sure we're trying to mitigate injury. Okay. And then the second thing is, right, you want to drive performance or also long-term athletic development, right? You want them to continue to care about their body long after they are done playing their sport. So if I'm saying that's the two givens, everybody wants to do that. How am I going to separate what I'm doing from everyone else? Because especially the school I'm at now, we're the smallest school in our conference by a lot. There's some schools that have double the enrollment that we have. And so I need to do things differently. If I don't, I'm not going to beat them at their game. And so the two things that besides the two goals that we have, what are my two personal goals to make our environment better and unique for our student athletes? And one is I want them to have toughness. And what's toughness to me? Well, a lot of people have different ways of coming up with toughness. My version of toughness is resiliency. So I want them to be proficient at what they do. I want them to be able to be efficient at what they do. And I want them to be able to do that consistently. If they can do those three things, that's resilience to me. So if they can do it proficiently, efficiently, and do that over time consistently, that's what we're going to see for our toughness or our resiliency. And then the other thing I want to see them do, so that's the one thing that I want to separate us away from others. And then the other thing I want to do to separate them is I want to make sure that we're doing things smart and ingenuitive. So I want to make sure that we are not just like, hey, I'm not going to outwork you too. I'm going to outsmart how you work. So we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck with everything that we do the best we can, right? So we're going to tinker a lot with things, but at the same time, it's never going to stray too far. So I don't want to swing back and forth on the pendulum. I want to climb the ladder. And so that's what I'm really focusing on with our athletes in that. So like, we don't want the objective data to pull from their mental aspect of them feeling good about themselves too, right? Because we know feelings matter. And so if I can get the feelings that they have to match the science that we have, that's where the penultimate is for our student athletes.
Sounds like you are a psychology major. Yeah, something like that. Is that coming up from your past there? I love it. Tell me how that makes you feel.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the quotes there, this is really cool. We don't want to swing back and forth like a pendulum. We want to climb the ladder. I like that. That's really good. I've never heard that. And that makes so much sense, because right now, sometimes what I feel like is like, okay, I really want to focus on environment. All right, now I'm going back to periodization. Now I'm here. And I feel like we're always chasing to get better, but am I actually taking steps forward? And that's a really good way to look at that and to visualize that, to have that illustration.
Yeah, and absolutely. To quote the Joker, are you a dog chasing cars, or are you actually trying to accomplish something, right? So I think we all say we were trying to accomplish something, but are we really focusing in on a small thing at a time that you can handle, right? If you're not focusing on one thing that you can handle at a time, and then you're not going to get anywhere, right? So like, that's why I kind of go back and forth. Like, I'm like, oh man, I'm getting really data heavy. I need to go back to make sure that this is matching with the environment that we want. Because if it is, then that's going to build the culture, right? Like, I got to make sure I have both those things. Are kids feeling valued in there? Like, Like I know that I'm not funny. I know that I'm not fun. I got a plan for fun. That's why we do those Kickstarters. That's why we do, because to me, training's fun. Like, hey, driving performance is fun for me, but a lot of our kids, and we all know that, that's not what's fun for them. So how do we make them say, hey, look, there's something for everybody in here, and then how can I make those things individualized for them to make it even better for them, like we just talked about. So that's really where we want to go with that. Not everybody likes to do cleans. Most of our kids hate to do snatch, but they do it and they like doing it because they see the performance from it, right? And I tell them, look, if we do hard things and other people aren't willing to do hard things, it's easier for us to overcome things when it gets hard.
A lot of little golden nuggets in there. I like that. That mindset piece is great. And when you can have what were you calling it? Objective data. When objective data drives the environment and the environment drives the data, man, that's a cool place to be. That's kind of like what we were talking about a little bit pre-show about gamification. You know what I'm saying? Because that's where people get hooked on that feeling of trying to get better, and being in an environment that allows you to do that it's a huge deal. Yeah, that's really cool. So namesake of the show, you've already alluded to it a little bit. You already talked about it a little bit, but if I was going to ask you, how are you making the big time where you're at? What's your answer?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is I want our kids to know that I would run through a brick wall for them. I'm never going to ask them to run through a brick wall for me. I want them to know that I would do it for them. If they know that I would do it for them, they know I got their back. I got their six, right? So I want them to know that. Like, as long as they know that, that's me making the big time where I'm at. I really value them so much that, like, to a point where, like, when one kid is upset with me or one kid is upset with what's going on in their life, it really, like, I'm like, man, how can I fix that? And I'm not good at that part, right? And so, because I am so, like, stoic with a lot of things I do, I try to find my way to do that. And that's something I know that I need to work on as a person, because I don't show my feelings very often. So trying to make them know that I'm human as well is really a big thing. So they know they got someone to lean on. They know they can always come to me. I'm here more hours than anybody is. So that's one thing I know I can hang my hat on is, hey, look, if you need somebody, you know where you can find me. But like we talked about too, is making it feel like they had an awesome experience, right? Throughout. Like, so I want them to be able to walk into any other weight room or go to any other, if they go to a university, play sports, that they go in there, hopefully killing it right away. So that's one less stressor when they go there. I want every student athlete to go into any gym and not feel intimidated to go over to the free weight section, just little things like that, and know that their experience at BTS right now and then Homewood next year, that it's the best experience possible. That, like, no, you should have seen our high school, they should feel that way, and if they feel that way, that's a great feeling, right? When they come back, that's the best feeling as a strength coach. They're like, coach, man, I miss this, I miss that, that's the coolest thing, right?
Absolutely. I think that I liked how you opened, especially too. Like, I'm not even going to ask them to run through the brick wall. I just want them to know that I'll do that for them. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And it's not that you want them to run through the brick wall then, but when they know that you're going to do that they're going to get to another level. I love that. That's really cool.
I'm not going to ask them to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do. Right. So, like, I really hope that they feel that way, because like I said, we're going to do hard things and we're going to do things you don't like to do. And not like 60% or more of the time, you don't want to train hard, right? Because your body's always in constant conservation. So how do we get ourselves out of that, right? So, like we talked about, exciting the CNS, exciting wanting to get the brain to learn and want to grow. Then that's going to go to the body wanting to learn, wanting to grow and push itself, because it doesn't want to be sore. So how do we get it to a point where we're getting the work that it needs to be in without it saying, hey, I'm going to shut down them tomorrow,
Yeah, that's great. I'm trying to teach my 3-year-old that. Like,
right?
we want to be able to do hard things. Yes. And being able to do that as a coach is a lot of fun too. Yeah, that's great stuff, Coach. So you've been on here a long time with me. So the show is whatever the length is great, but we talked a long time before that. And I always tell people we should probably just record earlier and cut it up on YouTube. But Coach, thank you for coming on. Before we go, any last remarks, anything that you want to talk about, make sure listeners know before we kind of tell them how to contact you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always willing to talk shop for people the best that I can, and I think the big thing is making sure, like we were talking about our path, right? Like, what do you want to do to get better? How do you want to get better? And focusing on those things, and then how's that going to benefit your athletes, right? How's that going to benefit those around you? I know, like, one of the big things that we all balance and struggle with is trying to make things unique, but at the same time not losing out on your family time and trying to do that. I've really focused on that the last 3 years of trying to be a better dad, be a better husband, because I live and breathe this stuff. I love it. But at the same time, I got to make sure that I shut it off when I go home. So I don't know if that's advice or what that is. Maybe it's advice for myself, like just trying to continue. You always want continual growth, but at the same time, you don't want to forget your roots or who you are, right? So like making sure that you kind of go back and forth with that, right? Like always double check, is that what I wanted to do? Like I don't think we reflect enough, I guess would be my statement on that. We need to reflect more. Because if we don't look back at what we did in history, we're not gonna learn from those mistakes.
Yeah, the reflection piece is such a big part of, like, well, even you talked about your kids, they're setting goals, right? I guarantee you're going back and you're looking at those things. Same thing that we need to do is we do it all the time as coaches and leading teams or leading weight rooms or whatever. But what's that look like for family time too? What's that look like for who you want to be at home? And I talked with Tony Stewart about this here recently, but something to the effect of, like, we die, there's nobody to replace us at home. We leave our job, they'll replace us in 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that should really, kind of sculpt the way that we live our life, in some way. It's got to affect us in some way. So, yeah. All right, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. That advice at the end is solid too. If that's advice for you, keep on rocking and rolling. I'll take it as advice for me too. So how is the best way for people to contact you? You said you like to talk shop. What would you say for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, my email is probably going to be changing here soon. So like at BBCHSIPT is all of my handles for Twitter, Instagram, and that might be changing too, because I'm changing school, so I might change that. But it's on TikTok and Facebook. You can email me at avogel@bbchs.org or adamvogel_56@yahoo.com. I don't answer the Yahoo one as much, but that might be the best one to contact me here come summertime. I don't know when this is coming out and stuff, but yeah, you'll see me out there.
Awesome. Yeah, Coach, once again, thank you. Super appreciative of you coming on and spending some time and a lot of time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. You guys are doing awesome stuff, man. It's been, I listen to the podcast religiously, and I can't believe you're at 153 now. That's crazy.
Congratulations. You hit the lucky number, 153. Everybody wants that one, and you got it. That's awesome, man. Thank you.
Yep.